Hey, I'm Kevin. I like to talk about queer stuff and Jesus, and today I'm answering your questions from Instagram. So let's jump in, shall we? So on Wednesdays, I'm trying this new thing called like Wisdom Wednesdays or whatever, because some people hashtag that, and then I figured I would answer the questions that come in from that. And this week there were some really interesting ones, so I figured why not answer them on camera for the YouTubes and share it with the rest of the people, because I figured it was a good place to start. I'm gonna have to unpack a lot of these in other videos, I think, but they're good conversation starters. So let's just dive in, shall we? First question, would you live with someone before married? Is that in the Bible? Yes, I would live with someone before I was married to them. I have lived with a romantic partner. Having had that experience, I think that I would not marry someone unless I lived with them before I actually married them or even got engaged, for that matter. A way that my friend Emily Joy once put it was that her marriage to her husband began way before she walked down the aisle. And so in my opinion, if I'm going to engage with commitment to somebody, if I'm going to engage in a lifelong partnership with somebody, I want my marriage celebration to be just that. I want it to be a celebration of the commitment that I already have and have created and the life that I've already built with somebody. And then the second part, is that in the Bible? No, there is nowhere in the Bible where it says you can't live with your romantic partner before you get married to them. I dare you to find that out. Now granted, if we want to ask why people still do that, I would wager a guess that somewhere along the lines between when women were treated as property and just given away to men, probably why men didn't live with women before they were married, because they hadn't purchased them yet. I don't know that for a fact, that's just a guess I have. I should probably research that a little bit more. But all I have to say, it's not in the Bible. Like, go find it. I dare you to find it where it says don't live with your romantic partner before you get married. Not a thing. Question 2, what are your thoughts on the scripture that says don't be yoked with unbelievers, or like don't be unevenly yoked? So that the verse actually is 2 Corinthians 6:14. Do not be yoked together with unbelievers, for what do righteousness and wickedness have in common? Or what fellowship can light have with darkness? Which seems like really harsh. Who wrote 2 Corinthians? Paul the Apostle. Yep, there it is. Okay, I'm gonna be real with you. I'm not good friends with Paul. Like, I don't know her. I'm not saying that I'm gonna disregard everything she has to say, but I think that in many ways, like every single writer and biblical person that we hold up in high esteem, I think in many ways they're ahead of their time and timeless in many respects, and I think also in many ways they're bound by their time. It's very easy to look at people and say that you're not a Christian and you're not a non-believer, you're not in the same club as me, and I'm just not here for that sort of thing. I'm someone who is quite interfaith. I see the value in all religious traditions. I'm still very much a Christian, but I'm not out here trying to tell like my Muslim brothers, sisters, siblings, my Jewish friends, anybody in the world that the way they practice their faith is wrong or is a mark of like darkness. I mean, I have plenty of friends who are in interfaith relationships that are working out just fine, and I have friends who are in different faith traditions than me, and I don't see darkness in them. I see so much light. I see God in them. So I would disagree with our friend Paul here as far as just like, don't be yoked with a non-believer or a non-Christian person. There's a lot of value in having relationships with people outside of that, romantic, platonic, or otherwise. Now, if you're gonna be dating somebody, I think a better way to look at this first of saying don't be unevenly yoked. Don't be unevenly yoked with someone who doesn't share the same value system as you. If you're somebody who is super anti-capitalist, super intersectional feminism, you're here to break down the cis white heterosexual patriarchy, don't date a white guy who doesn't have a critical lens of anything. I actually went on a date with this guy one time, super successful, owned his own interior design business, and he said to me, and I kid you not, still makes me laugh. He said, I don't understand why we don't have a White History Month. That was the last time I saw him. So, date people who have similar values to you. Date people who are adding to your life. Date people who you don't have to explain your work to. Because I think sometimes that can be really freaking exhausting. But again, don't be unevenly yoked, look for values. I think that's an easier way of looking at the scripture rather than looking at it so black and white, don't date a non-Christian. I mean, in the world we live in, especially being queer, do you know how hard it is to find a queer Christian person that you're attracted to that has that just lines up? It's hard. It's hard. And if you can find a queer Christian out there, great, do it up. And if you are a queer Christian out there who wants to date a, semi-successful seminarian, I mean, holla at your boy or girl, depending on the day. Moving on to the next question. It just says sex in the Bible ? Progressive view ? How do you define sexual immorality ? So, sex in the Bible. I'm actually gonna have to do a whole series on this, but short version, I believe that sex is good and pleasure is nice, and that if you are a consenting adult, that it's okay to have sex before marriage. Scandal! Let me just say this before, because like there's a million ways I want to unpack this. I think sex before marriage is fine. I think sex before marriage is okay. I think sex before marriage is probably best had with somebody that you have some form of an emotional connection with. Sex is complicated. Sex complicates things. It's both physical and spiritual. So there's a lot of things to unpack. So as like, you really need to come up with a sexual ethic that works for you. So if you're somebody who does want to save sex for marriage, that's great. If you're someone who doesn't, that's great too. But I think it's a question of really asking yourself, am I ready for this? Am I ready to accept the consequences that come with having sex? And that's why I think having a practice of safe sex is really important. I guess we should open that up in another video, right? So yeah, I definitely have a progressive view on sex and sexuality and relationship structures. The last part, how do I define sexual immorality? Anytime that we are using sex to dominate or to belittle or to take agency away from another person. That's what I believe sexual immorality is. I believe it's any time that we fail to recognize the image of God in another person, respect their autonomy, agency, and their right to say no. And I think also if we are, like say you're, like, I also think sexual immorality applies if you violate trust with a partner. If you're using sex outside of the boundaries that you've set in your relationship, I think that is sexual immorality. How do you cultivate confidence in standing up for truth? Cultivating confidence is a practice, and it's not just something you are, it is a practice that you practice every single day. You don't just wake up one day and say, oh my God, I'm so confident, like sure of who I am. No, you have to wake up and sometimes pretend that you're confident. Sometimes you have to fake it until you make it, honey. Like if you're having these moments where you're not confident in yourself, where you keep having these like self-doubt, self-loathing behaviors or self-talk, start to notice that. Like every single time that you have a thought that is talking down to yourself, that is not confident, that doesn't bring you life, note it and say, oh, that's interesting. Don't judge it. Don't say, beat yourself up for having a bad feeling about yourself and thus having a shame spiral. Just note it. It's like, I just said something shitty to myself. That's interesting. Oh, I wanted to say something to that person, but I didn't. That's interesting. And the more you notice it, the more it's going to get annoying to you. And then eventually you're gonna be like, you know what? Fuck that. I know who I am. I know how God created me to be. I'm just gonna live that out. It's a practice. Confidence is a practice, my friends. So try little acts of bravery every single day. It might be just asking for what you want. You know, it might be setting a boundary with a family member. It might be talking to that person that you have a crush on and just letting them know that you have feelings for them. That, my friends, is small little acts of bravery that can really build up self-confidence and, you know, your practice of confidence. Another question, do you ever feel shame about your sexuality? If so, how do you cope? Not as much as I used to, but every now and then I do. I feel it most when I am in non-affirming spaces and I ask the question, should I tone myself down so that I can be more acceptable in the room? And the answer to that is always no. I should always walk into a space and feel free to be myself, because I do a disservice to people when I don't walk in with my full self in the room, because they don't know who they're dealing with and they could never know like the joy they could have from getting to know me. And same thing for you. If you're not walking into a space with your full self, you do yourself a disservice and you do the people in the room a disservice, because they don't have a chance to get to know you, love you, and have their lives completely shaken up by how radical of a person you are. Now granted, if you're in a space that it's not safe to be your full self, obviously practice safety, obviously like, you know, code switch when you need to. It's normal to feel shame about your sexuality, especially during the coming out process. And I think it's the same thing, noting the moments when you have those self-doubts and then speaking truth to that. Speaking truth to the lies that you kind of built up in your head. So whenever I have felt a moment of just like, maybe I'm wrong about this, I remember the experiences where God has shown up in big ways and impacted me and filled me up with confidence and love. And I remember the moments where I am with my community of people, or the moments where I have had like romantic moments with a guy or something like that, and know like, you know, this is holy, this is good. So it's just a matter of like reminding yourself of like how far you've come, where you've been, and like think about what it would be like to go back to that place of self-loathing. Not needed whatsoever. So continue to keep your eyes forward, march on the prize. Again, I think this is another practice. It's not just like you're gonna wake up one day and just not be ashamed of yourself. I think shaking off the shame and noticing it when it comes up again, that's the way to really do it. How much of your family is affirming, and how do you deal with the ones that are not affirming? I'm actually really lucky. Most of my family is pretty affirming of who I am. I actually took my last partner home for Christmas last year, and my family was so wonderful. Didn't bat an eye, it wasn't weird at all. I really enjoyed last Christmas because of that. I've got a conservative family who lives in different parts of the South, you know, people who work in ministry, and I'm honestly not really sure how many of them are going to show up on my wedding day. I'm actually really curious to see how that's going to work out. But speaking to the part, like, how do you deal with a family that's not affirming? I think it depends on what they are. If they're aggressively non-affirming, if they're constantly trying to talk to you about the 6 clobber passages of the Bible, set a boundary with them. Tell them, hey, I love you, and if we're going to continue to have a relationship, I need to set this boundary up so that I can continue to love you, because right now, the things that you're saying to me hurt me deeply, and I don't want this to drive a wedge between us just because we disagree. For example, when I go home to my family, we have a rule. We don't talk about politics, we don't talk about basically, we don't talk about politics and religion in our very Christian household. Really weird, right? But that's a boundary we've kind of set up for ourselves so that we can maintain civility among each other, and that's how my family works, and that's okay. Your family might be different. Your family might be able to engage with them with the deeper questions. You might not be able to engage with them at all because it's so hostile, and if that's the case, setting a boundary of communication, distance, how you see them, how often you see them, that's a boundary that you can set for yourself to keep yourself healthy and not feel guilty about it. I think a lot of us tend to feel guilty when we are trying to love our family well, but then they're unable to love us well. And at the end of the day, you have to take care of yourself so that you continue to live and thrive and live an abundant life. That's what I would say. If you have a family that's not affirming and they're aggressively not affirming, set boundaries for yourself so that you can keep yourself safe. Maybe I should do a whole video on boundaries too, what that looks like. That's an idea. I'm gonna write that down. Okay, thank you so much for watching this video. If you think it was nice or cool or helpful, go ahead, like, share, and subscribe. You can also help make more content like this possible by becoming a sustaining partner on Patreon. All right, I have to go meet a friend for coffee. I'll talk to you soon. Bye.